J'ouvre la séance.
Okay, now open the session. Welcome to meeting number 32 of the Standing Committee on Veteran Affairs. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format. According to House Order adopted June 22nd, 2022, members can participate in person or through the Zoom application. But today we're all here in person. So I would ask you before speaking, waiting for me to call upon you, and all comments from the MPs should be addressed through the chair. So this meeting is dedicated today to the committee's work, and I already see the hand of the first vice chair of the committee, Mr. Blake Richards, and I now give him the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I indicated with my notice at the last meeting, that I would move the motion. I can read it into the record again, just for clarity's sake, and then I'll give some explanation as to the rationale behind the motion, and then would be interested in hearing the comments of my colleagues. That pursuant to Standing Order 108-1A, the committee order that all briefing notes, memos, emails, and text or other electronic messages from Veterans Affairs Canada officials prepared for or sent to the Minister of Veterans Affairs regarding medical assistance in dying, including related to the internal investigation into the matter, be provided to the committee within 30 days of the adoption of this motion. That all internal memos, emails, and documents distributed by Veterans Affairs Canada to veterans service agents and caseworkers regarding the department's policy on discussing medical assistance in dying between January 1st, 2019 and December 7th, 2022 be provided to the committee within 30 days of the adoption of this motion. That any notes, memos, emails, and documents related to the deletion or destruction of phone calls, emails, messages, and client notes related to the subject of medical assistance in dying, providing for the redaction of names and personal information of veterans and VAC clients between July 1st of 2022 and December 7th of 2022, be provided to the committee within 30 days of the adoption of this motion, and that all AssistNet requests by Veterans Affairs Canada employees to delete client notes related to medical assistance in dying, providing for the redaction of names and personal information of veterans and VAC clients between July 1st of 2022 and December 7th of 2022, be provided to the committee within 30 days of the adoption of this motion. So I move that motion. And let me just give a little bit of explanation of what we're talking about. So I'll go point by point. First of all, I think the first one is fairly self-explanatory. The briefing notes, the memos, emails, and other messages that Veterans Affairs Canada officials have prepared for or sent to the Minister of Veterans Affairs regarding this issue. This is obviously there to ensure that this committee has the benefit of the information that's been provided, because it seems like what's happened in the meetings that we've had on this issue, where the minister or officials have been here. We've gotten a lot of different stories. The story seems to change even within one meeting itself. The story changed numerous times. So I think it's important that this committee have the benefit of understanding, exactly what what was, what the information that the Veterans Affairs officials have provided to the minister is, and in relation to the investigation itself as to what because there even seemed to be questions within the meeting where there seemed to be real inability to clarify from the minister and his officials what exactly the status of the investigation is. So hopefully, the documents that we're asking for here would shed some light on what the status of that investigation is, what is happening with that investigation, what has been learned, and obviously about the issue itself. So I won't spend a lot of time there other than to say that. In terms of the second part of the motion, again, here, this is an attempt to determine whether there has been any kind of direction given. When we hear from numerous veterans, and I mean the minister has admitted that there are 4 cases. We have heard of at least 4 others, and there's and unfortunately, in the case of these veterans. There is a lack of trust that they have towards Veterans Affairs, and therefore, they're either not willing to come forward publicly in a couple of cases, and in a couple of others, willing to come forward, but uncomfortable doing so in a place that's they don't feel is safe for them, and it's really unfortunate that that's the case. But I can understand it, and so. When we start to get into this matter, and you start to hear about as many as 8 cases that we're aware of, and when you look at those cases, it's very, very difficult to imagine that what we're being told, which is that it's confined to one caseworker, it's very difficult to imagine that being accurate, that being truthful, because. What you're hearing, first of all, from Christine Gauthier, is that she was given this suggestion by 2 different caseworkers. One was male, and one was female. So right there's no way that can be one individual. And then when you start to look at where these individuals are located in the country, it's very unlikely that they're all working with the same office. So that would then again indicate there's not a chance that this could be just one individual. So it really seems unlikely that that's the case. But yet, the stories that we've heard, and I mean I've heard some of them through the media, some of them through what the minister has told us. They all have a very similar pattern to them, and the conversation has gone in a very similar way, and it makes one wonder how that could have been. And I think it's important to see what kind of information has been given to employees, and further to that, I think even what kind of information has been given to employees, since this became public. Because even asking for something as simple as information about what the standard operating procedures are at Veterans Affairs for the recording of calls yielded something that would be far less than what we actually asked for. It was sort of almost something that someone just typed up on a Word document just to explain to the committee why they didn't want to give us what we were asking for. And so it just seems odd. And so I think it's important that we have the information that is available, that wasn't provided to the committee through our previous requests. In relation to the last couple of points in here, talking about deletion or destruction of phone calls, messages, in relation to the AssistNet request. So what we're talking about here is, and you look at the period, it's a much smaller period of time that we're talking about here. And the reason for that is obviously when this became public, I believe it was early August, but there was sort of some rumblings about it prior to that, in my understanding. So I've chosen the date of July 1st just for that reason. But simply that period of time since it sort of was rumbled about publicly somewhat, you know, one can easily imagine why someone might want to modify a file had they made a similar suggestion to a veteran. And no one here is looking to have personal information of veterans, to make that very clear right now. And I've made that clear in the motion by indicating providing for the redaction of names and personal information of veterans and VAC clients. Nobody needs to have the personal information of a veteran who's had this offer made to them. So I want to make that very clear. That's not what anyone is seeking here. This is simply to try and determine whether there has been these kinds of requests. If that hasn't happened, and one hopes it hasn't, I mean, we all would hope that hasn't happened, then there is really not going to be much here for Veterans Affairs to need to provide. And let's hope that's the case. Let's hope there's nothing they need to provide here, that nobody has tried to cover their tracks, so to speak. But if someone has, in fact, done that, I think it's important this committee knows that, because we're clearly not getting all the information here from the minister or his officials at the present time when we've had them come before committee about what is transpiring here. And I'm not even suggesting that any of this has occurred, simply that we should know if it has. So it may be that there's nothing that needs to be provided here. But if there is something, well, it's important this committee is aware of it, because it feels to me like if we're going to get to the bottom of this and what has actually happened, this committee is going to have to be a part of making that happen. And so that's what's being requested here is that information. Perhaps I'll leave it at that right now. And see what others have to say, and I may want to speak some more to it based on what I hear. But I will move the motion and open it for discussion.
So, thank you, Mr. Richards. But before I go to Ms. Blenay, in that motion, the third and the fourth paragraph, you are asking about deletion or destruction of documents, things like that. Can you give us some explanation? Do you think that the minister has backup because if those information documents are deleted, how they will be able to provide those notes, memo, and emails? Can you give us a little bit explanation or what you're looking for, please?
Well, what we'd be talking about here, obviously, if something has been deleted, it would be there would have had to have been some communication about that happening. So my understanding of the process, for example, for either a service agent or a case manager to remove something from a client's file, there has to be a request. There has to be an email sent requesting it, and then there would be confirmation that would come back. So if that request has been made, there would be some kind of backup documentation, whether it be an email or otherwise, that request was made. So it would indicate that information has been deleted. And I think then what that would then indicate is there more that we aren't aware of that has occurred here. And I certainly hope that there will be nothing that will come from either of these two things. But if there is, it would indicate to this committee that there's a bigger scope to this than what we believe. So it's actually quite important to have that information. It's not to get the client's or the veteran's personal information or to even see the contents of their file. It's to simply know whether requests have been made to delete something about medical assistance in dying from a file.
Great, thanks. And now I'd like to go to Ms. Blenay, and you have no limited time, so the floor is yours.
Well, let me think of all the things I've always wanted to say. I think today is the day. I will not do that to any of us because I know that at the end of the day, what we really care about is protecting veterans and making sure that they feel safe and they feel heard. So I have no problem supporting this. I don't know that this will be the answer that will give us a solution, but I think it's a step along the way. I think that long term, we just have to find a way to get this done, cleared up, and make sure that veterans feel safe. And that may take a little bit of time, and I think the committee is part of it, but may not be the whole solution. So I'm definitely putting some time thinking into that. So at this point, I think it's fine. I think, I guess the one question that I would have, not so much for Blake, but maybe through you to the clerk chair is, do the dates make sense? I think 30 days seems fairly reasonable, but I just acknowledge that we won't be back in the House till the end of January, so it might behoove us if we could hear from the clerk if those dates make sense, or if we want to maybe look at having them just before we get to committee, a week before. I'm just wanting to clarify those dates. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just look at the clerk and they say that it's up to the committee to make the request, so we'll live with that. And I'd like to go to Mrs. Kathy Morgenthau.
Thank you, Chair. I do also obviously support us going forward with this. I have a great deal of concern around how our veterans are feeling in regard to this issue, either those that have come forward saying that they have been approached and those that are now considering something that they should not even be considering. So I do support us moving forward with this. I think it's important that we get as much information as we can as a committee to be able to assist in bringing this issue to an end for our veterans. The level of sanctuary trauma that they were experiencing prior to the breakout of this news and this circumstance is just that much greater. And it's always tougher, too, going into the Christmas season. So I think it would be important to them to know that we're on this and we are doing our best to get the details so that we know what's happened. I also want to just say something in regard to case managers and service managers. We've had some come and testify here that clearly showed a great deal of commitment to veterans on a very personal level, as well as a huge commitment to their responsibilities and what they do. So I think it's important, too, that we find out the dynamics around these circumstances, because many of them, I'm sure, are apprehensive either about coming forward or being considered as party to something that they, I hope and feel for many of them is not the case. So I think that the depth that we've gone into here is significant, but it's necessary. And I do believe that it's the best thing that we could possibly do for our veterans so that we get clarity and an end to this unfortunate and frightening circumstance that they find themselves in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Morgenthau. And who else would like to debate this motion? Mr. Sean Casey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let me start by saying I'll be supporting the motion, but some of the comments made by Mr. Richards cannot go unchallenged. He stated that the department has changed their story several times. That is not true. The department changed their testimony when new evidence came to light after the original testimony was given. He said the status of the investigation is unclear. It isn't. The officials have testified unequivocally with respect to the status of the investigation. He indicated that there are numerous veterans, at least 4 others. Well, if there are, that has not been presented to the committee. And maybe there are people talking to Mr. Richards who have chosen not to come before the committee or who have chosen not to come before the committee and provide anything to corroborate what they've said. Maybe so, but to quote the minister, we can only deal in facts. He says that we're starting to hear about at least 8 other cases. Maybe he's starting to hear about 8 other cases. The committee isn't. He says he's connecting stories through what the minister has told us and through what the media has told us. The minister has also been unequivocal with respect to having to deal in facts. He's been unequivocal to say that what has happened is entirely unacceptable, but to enter into the realm of speculation and then to repeat it so many times as to make it sound like that is the fact is actually completely unfair. So the request, the motion is reasonable. The motion is one that deserves to be supported. The narrative and the speculation that is being produced without substantiation can't be allowed to stand untested. The suggestion that one might imagine why someone might alter a file. Wow. This is, I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. They're not entitled to their own facts. And in my view, they're not entitled to do a drive-by smear of the people that work at Veterans Affairs. That can't go unchallenged. So, as I said, I'll be supporting the motion. I will be quite interested in hearing...
Excuse me, point of order. Mr. Richards.
Just a point of order, because I think it's important that when, much like Mr. Casey's trying to suggest here, that it's important that we stick to facts. I want to make it clear that what we're talking about is not an insinuation that something has occurred or
it's not a point of order. That's a point of argument.
Well, it's important we remain factual, right? And what I'm indicating is that no one was indicating that, or there was any belief that Veterans Affairs employees had done this. It was only a matter of determining if it had happened, and it was very clear that everyone here, including myself, would hope that it's not.
Mr. Speaker, it's not a point of order. So my colleague had the floor. I think that you should respect that process.
Have time to respond to Mr. Casey, but now I'd like to go back to...
The comment to which I am responding was, one might imagine why someone might alter a file. Is that fair? So the last thing I want to say is this, and this is more in the form of a question to you, Mr. Chair, or to the clerk, or to Mr. Richards. A motion was adopted by this committee to have the veteran Bruce come before the committee before December the 14th and to be allowed to testify in public in a manner that protected his identity. Could someone inform us of the status of that request now that we are almost at December the 14th? Christine Gauthier testified that she was offered medical assistance in dying in writing from Veterans Affairs. Mr. Richards asked that letter be produced. Has it been produced? Ms. Gauthier also indicated that she had complained about this in writing to the Prime Minister and to the Minister of Veterans Affairs. Have we asked for and have we received those things? This is all consistent with, to quote Mr. Richards, trying to stick to facts and what's before the committee. So I'll be supporting the motion. I do think that the justification for the motion as elucidated by Mr. Richards contained a lot of things that shouldn't go unchallenged, and that's the sole purpose of my intervention. I'll still be voting for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. But to answer your question, first of all, I remember that the motion regarding the veteran Bruce, it was for today till December the 12th. And we are here today, and I think that this motion, just a second. And for the second one, maybe that you're going to answer. So I'm going to start with Mr. Richards and after Ms. Blaney. Mr. Richards.
Sure. First of all, I thank Mr. Casey for his support for the motion, and I do want to be clear that in no way was I trying to cast aspersions on the department or the minister or anyone else, in simply indicating that it's important that we have all the information. That was really what I was getting at, there certainly was confusion. I know, not just in my mind, about what actually the story was, especially the first time that the minister was here. And I don't think I'm not even indicating that someone was trying to not give us the whole story, but I just felt like there was a lot of confusion that was left, and in getting this information, I think it will help to clear up some of that confusion. So I apologize if my remarks seemed otherwise. But in regards to the question, I don't know that I can provide much assistance in terms of Ms. Gauthier and what she's provided and not provided. That might be something that might be better answered by the clerk. But I can provide some more information about the motion about the veteran who was referred to as Bruce. He had indicated, had reached out to me personally and had indicated that he wanted to have the opportunity to tell his story here. Following the adoption of the motion, he has, I think he's got some concerns about the effect on his mental health. I brought it up last meeting. The 5-minute thing is something that I know many veterans have expressed concern about, for example. And so perhaps if he was offered the opportunity to testify for longer, he might potentially reconsider. But he's in a place right now where he just isn't sure that it would be a good thing for his mental health to come before the committee. That may change in the future. Hard to say. But I mean, if it does, I'm sure he'll inform us, and I'm sure the committee would indulge, obviously. Provide him that opportunity, but at this point, I don't expect it to happen before December 14th. So hopefully that gives a bit more clarity on that.
Thank you,
point of order, Chair.
Yes.
So my colleague asked for the clerk to give us feedback on the request.
That's what I'm going to do.
Mr. Richards,
Yep.
we did ask Mr. Richards, we'd like to hear from the
Yeah,
clerk now.
exactly. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to invite the clerk to say a few words about Mrs. Gauthier and the file. Please.
Concernant Madame Gauthier, on a...
We haven't had any answer from Madame Gauthier. We will be doing a follow-up. There has not been any response by email since her testimony.
Yeah, but Ms. Blenny first and Mr. Desilets after.
So I just want to make sure, I thought I clarified this last meeting, but it was in camera, so now we get a chance to do it publicly. Sorry about that. But what I understand is the testimony from Ms. Gauthier was translated in English, and it was a little bit of a miscommunication. What I understand she said in French was, and I leave it to the clerk to tell me if I'm correct, is that she had received from a case, somebody working with her through Veterans Affairs, the offer to MAID, and that she had written a letter. So she did not actually receive a letter from the department, but she had been offered it verbally and then wrote a letter to the Prime Minister talking about that. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, because, Mr. Casey talked about a letter from the department, and I thought that was the case as well, listening to the interpretation, but I was told later on that that was not the case. So I just think that's important that we have that officially on the record. And the second thing is just around this veteran called Bruce for very important reasons. If there's a motion that Blake is planning to bring forward to increase the time for the testimony and maybe a different process, I welcome it, and I would be happy to look at supporting something like that to make this a more friendly environment for a veteran to come forward. Thank you.
Ms. Blenny, would you like to? Yeah, so the clerk will answer.
Répondre à Madame Blenny en tant que
As a Francophone, I heard the same thing as you heard in relation to Madame Gauthier.
Notre deuxième.
Our second Vice President, Mr. Desilets. I wanted to follow up on what Madame Blenny said. Yes, there was a letter that was drafted. But this letter doesn't come from the department or from the Prime Minister. She wrote a letter to complain. We received a copy. I didn't even think it necessary to inform you of that because it doesn't add anything to the debate. In the letter, she said something like, well, it is a complaint about fares, services. She said, when do you want me to come to ask for medical assistance in dying? And nobody offered that. So I asked her when she was here if she had some personal notes that could inform us, because she writes everything down. It concerns such a day I received a phone and an offer was made by phone. Well, it's been 10 days already. We have made 2 further attempts and we still haven't received any documentation. So that's what I have about Madame Gauthier. Do you want me to follow up on the proposal? On the weekend I read this with my assistant. We analyzed it, and first of all, it was a clear no. Then I took a glass of wine, and it wasn't really a counter proposal, but some sort of amendment. This is a public meeting. Yes, we made an amendment. And it's like halfway there. We have 4 cases without anything concrete once again. We're going before, if we go before the courts with one of these situations, it doesn't take away from the importance of the situation. I don't want to denigrate the 4 people that referred to this, but we don't have anything really concrete. That's why my position is somewhat middle of the road. In the committee, we have so many issues to debate on. So at some point, we have to set up priorities and we have to let certain things go. I'm not diminishing these 4 cases. There are potentially 8. We asked for an extension. If there are people who want to show up, they can come. The doors are wide open. People know this can be done in camera. If they don't want to be identified, we could find a way to conceal the identity. It must be confidential. But so far, nothing is really happening. So I proposed an amendment. I believe, Mr. Chair, you received it or the clerk? No? Sorry? Inaudible. You have to make the proposal and then the clerk will send it. It's quite simple. We want us to get to the bottom of things, but by limiting our energies as a committee and sparing the energies of the public servants that are working on this, the holidays are coming. There are deadlines. I have discussed with my consecutive colleague the deadline is not reasonable. I would like to go till 1st February so we could have some breathing room, but I was looking at the first point. I would simply remove in the French text what was sent out concerning medical assistance in dying, including internal inquiry. Well, internal inquiry, we have questioned ministers, deputy ministers. It's confidential. It's in the hands of the RCMP. I think it would be more credible to ask for things where we can possibly get answers. So I would just take out that line. And I would say not 30 days deadline, but 45. Second point, I would put 45 days, 1st February, and remove or disappear the 3rd and 4th elements. Why? Because I was so naive. I thought if I'm a consultant, a stakeholder, and I write in my file things that are not exact, and then I delete them, then I state somewhere that I deleted them, well, that doesn't seem right. There is something illogical there. So I don't really believe in this elements in points 3 and 4. It seems illogical. And as all humans, a public servant would like to protect themselves first. So it's not by destroying notes, it's keeping them just in case something comes up where he might need some justification for actions. So making disappear, that's too much. I don't think it really exists in the public service. Maybe, once again, I'm naive. And this would involve tons and tons of boxes, material to analyze and things that would be redacted. So in summary, my amendment would be 1, 2, with a slight modification, and I would take out 3, 4. Once again, presenting such a motion to public servants, if we really had some backing, well, let's go. But 4 cases that hard to prove, that must not be neglected, but 4 cases are still just 4 cases. So that is my amendment, Chair, and we'll have a motion to propose. Very simple. Okay, great. We'll debate your amendment first, but Mr. Desile, Chari, I understand that paragraph 3 and 4, you simply want to remove those. In the second, you would replace 30 days by 45 days. But the first paragraph, could you read it that all notes should not be mentioned? That all notes, service memos, emails, text messages, other electronic messages coming from public servants from Veterans Affairs Canada, prepared for the Department of Veterans Affairs, be supplied to the committee within 45 days after the motion is adopted. That's in parentheses, 1st February 2023. Thank you. So we are ready to debate the amendment, Mr. Desile's amendment. And who would like to speak on this amendment? Mr. Frizadomi.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak to this. And, I've sat on this committee for over a year now, and 2 things that I've recognized, across the aisle is that this committee has a responsibility to do its due diligence, and further, that this committee has prided itself on addressing some of the issues that may be messy and to deal with them. And so I would have to say that I would not be supporting the amendments here, because I think it would be half of a job, and I think we would be letting veterans down. As I said, it might be a little bit messy, but we have to find out where the problems lie, where they stem from. And further, the content of the overall motion that was brought forward, there's 2 components to it. There's the freedom of information, which the public should be entitled to, but there's the protection of privacy. And I think that the motion that was first presented protects the individual rights, and we have to recognize that. Protecting names and understanding that as a government that's also a responsibility, and quite often people in the public forget about that. They think it's just the freedom of information, and I think that what Mr. Richards, my colleague, has brought forward is something that is well-rounded. It is quite large and encompassing, but it is the responsibility of this committee. It is the responsibility of this committee to protect the veterans. And unfortunately, sometimes there are things that are missed, and I believe that Mr. Desile's amendments would be something that would be adding to missing key components to finding out what's going on within this department. So I cannot support it. I appreciate his intervention, but I do think that we really need to have a full understanding of what is going on from start to finish, and so I would not be supporting his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Tolmie. And now Mrs. Morgenthau.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have concerns, Mr. Desilets, in deleting those last two because I did hear a lot of confusion around the issues as to whether or not phone calls were recorded in the first place. And I also heard from a veteran who tried to reach to get information about what was in that phone call, and they said, well, it was recorded, but it's now deleted because we don't keep them forever. So there are issues around communications with veterans where they are, I think, trying to find the right routes to make sure that what they're saying is corroborated and backed up. But it seems very difficult. So I think it is important that we take a look and see what has happened there. I agree with you. I have trouble believing anything truly gets deleted in this government. It's there somewhere, most likely. I don't know, but as far as the communications are, it's that they're deleted or they're destroyed. And to a certain level, I don't question that because you can't keep everything forever. But at the same time, this is something that our veterans are depending on to be able to confirm. As Mr. Casey had mentioned, we need that proof. We need actual facts, and it's very difficult for them. I can't help but think if I was in their place, which I don't even know why I say that because I wouldn't have a clue, and going through what they're going through with illness, with trying to get help, with PTSD, and then in the midst of all of that being offered MAID, I don't think your mind would be in that moment thinking, I need to be able to corroborate, I need to be recording this or have all of the information to be able to confirm this. So this is our way as a committee, I think, of possibly enabling them to get some of that information.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Morgenthau. Mrs. Valdez.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just listening to the discussion. I just want some clarity. So I hear what Monsieur Desilets is saying. There's in the third and fourth paragraph. There's a line with brackets which says, "Providing for the redaction of names and personal information of veterans and VAC clients." Was wondering if you would be comfortable moving up that bracket section up to. This is more of a compromise. Moving that section, which protects our vets, up to sections 1 and 2. I was just offering that as a compromise between what I've been hearing and is what we're debating. The second point I want to make is the fact that right now we have an investigation going on, and so a lot of resources are being pulled to investigate these cases, and we all want to get it to a resolution. So if I'm comfortable with this overall motion, but it's going to take away time and effort for the actual investigation to happen. So just as a committee, we should be mindful of the resources that we're pulling from the investigation. And second, I just feel like between what Monsieur Desilets is saying and what we ultimately want with this motion, to move what's in the paragraphs up to 1 and 2.
So right now we are discussing the amendment, but I understand this is not an amendment or a friendly amendment, just a suggestion to Mrs. Morgenthau.
I appreciate the member's comments there. I do agree that there are a lot of moving parts here, and I believe Mr. Desilets mentioned moving it up to 45 days. Of time to be able to complete this. And I would agree with that we need to give some more time in light of the break and also the load that they do have. However, I would mention, I think that the fact that they are doing an internal investigation would actually make this easier to complete, because these are things that I would think they are including in part of that process of trying to prepare inside for that investigation. So as far as it competing with their time, I think it actually would be well served by the time that they're using right now for that internal investigation. But I would say that I do support moving it to a 45-day window. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wagenthal. So we have to deal with this amendment first. So if we don't have any change or any friendly amendment, we're going to have to go to vote on the amendment presented by Mr. Desilets. Ms. Blenny.
So I'm just wondering, it sounds like there is some interest in exploring the 45-day component and not the other one. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could separate those two things. So vote on the 45, extending from 30 to 45 days. That part I'm in support of. I've heard other people say they're in support of. The other part I am not in support of. So I just wanted to see if we could do that, or I'll leave that to you, Chair.
Yes,
but I just
thank
wanted
you.
to ask.
Thank you. Yes, on the same point, Mr. Richards.
If I can, on that same point, if it sounds like there is some feeling amongst some committee members to go with the 45 days. I thought 30 was reasonable, but I mean 45. It's not going to change the world, and I don't see a major issue with that myself. I do have, however, as I think I'm hearing from others, some concern about removing the last couple of items that Mr. Desilets is suggesting removing, and I want to make it really clear at this point. Like, this isn't asking for. It seems like there might be some misunderstanding that there is a request being made here for the actual client files or notes and that's not what's being asked for. It's exchanges between internal exchanges about the idea of deleting. So one would hope that there is none of those. That there hasn't been any of those. If there has, I think it's important this committee knows it, and that's simply all we're seeking here. So I think what I wanted to understand in sort of clarifying what Ms. Blaney was asking. It would be my understanding that the simple way to handle that, then, if there's people who want to see a 45-day window, but not delete the last couple of items, which I feel, and it sounds like many others on the committee here feel are important to keep in, it would simply be that we would defeat this amendment, and then someone would move an amendment to increase the deadline to 45 days subsequent to that. Would that not be the way that would be handled?
Well, it's up to the committee, but right now we have an amendment, so we have to vote on this amendment. Yeah. And
I guess
we will go back to the original motion.
Is that if we were to defeat the amendment, then could not someone then move for 45-day, make that suggestion by itself as an amendment?
Okay. Let's take a short break. I'm going to consult with the clerk, and I'll get back to you. Just a second.
continuing the session. So, the members of the committee, please, we'll move on with our session. In order to clear up the situation after discussing with the clerk, I think Mr. Desley, your option proposed is to say my amendment would be, for example, to eliminate the last two paragraphs, and we will be voting on that. Then we could make an amendment to change the 30 days to 45 days, and also the phrase you want to remove in order to accomplish that. So before Mr. Desley, first Mr. Richards, and I also have Madame Morgenthau. So Mr. Richards.
The situation correctly, then, Chair, like we seem to have a situation where committee members want to support a portion of the amendment and not support the other portion. Could we then not, could we not just make the decision as a committee to split the amendment into two votes? So in other words, we could have a vote on the 45-day portion and then have a separate vote on the second portion of the amendment, which would be to remove the last two bullet points, so that way committee members would be able to vote on each separately?
But I think that we need to have two different amendments for that,
yeah.
no?
And that's, I guess that's what I'm suggesting, is that we split it, right?
Yeah, so that's why I'm asking.
An agreement, we could split and have a vote on the 45-day portion, and then we could have a vote on the deletion of the last two bullet points separately.
Yeah. So that's what I'm asking Mr. Desilets to, first of all, his amendment, he can change it to say the two last paragraph, it's over, we're going to vote on that, and after that, present
Regardez,
something
Monsieur le Président, je ne veux pas être...
Mr. Chair, I don't want to draw the debate out. I think out of respect for our time, just one question. Maybe the analyst or the clerk could answer when we write documents linked to the deletion or destruction of calls. Do these exist in the department, a structure that can tell us, John removed such and such a document? It doesn't exist? Well, that's my whole issue with the points 3 and 4. If it doesn't exist, then why amend it then? I don't know. Maybe, thank you for your answer, Mr. Casey, but Monsieur Paris, well, if any applications were made by anyone at all, by email, something that could be documented, making a request to delete something, normally all these emails should be preserved by the public servants. So if there was such a mechanism, it would be quite easy to retrace it. If it exists, it would be easy to find. But I suspect that there won't be too many of those. But if it does exist, you are saying it might exist. There is no system that would specifically apply to the elements that have to be removed. Well, you do reassure me. One of my concerns is not giving unnecessary work to public servants out of respect for our public servants and our veterans. If you're saying that exists, then I would simply withdraw my amendment, and that would facilitate. Maybe I could make an amendment that makes us go from 30 to 45 days and leave it at that. That is for the first point. For the second point, I'm talking about 1st February 2023, quite simply. Thank you, Mr. Desilets. On the list, I have Ms. Morgenthau, Mr. Richards. But Mr. Desilets, to remove an amendment, it requires unanimous consent of the committee. So, do we continue the debate on the amendment?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, the analyst was reading my mind. That was my concern, and we will reveal that by asking these questions. So I would encourage us to accept Mr. Desley's recommendation and go to the vote. Yeah. We're good.
Go to vote on?
on him,
On his amendment?
him choosing to remove the second two and go with the 45 days. Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
I believe so.
As a point of order, Mr. Chair, my understanding of what Mr. Desilets was suggesting was that he had withdrawn his previous amendment and was moving a new amendment to change all instances of 30 days to 45 days. That was my understanding, is that he's moved an amendment now, a new amendment, which would just change every instance of 30 days to 45 days. And I think what Ms. Wagenthal was suggesting, and I would agree, was that we could go to a vote on that because it seems like there's some agreement to do that.
Okay. I'm going to verify with him. Monsieur Desilets.
Mr. Desilets, Mr. Richards was saying the way he understood this was that you were withdrawing your amendment. Simply, you're replacing the 30 days by 45 days, so that would be your new amendment. So could you clarify for us, please? That it requires unanimous consent, yes, to withdraw the amendment that you proposed. Well, unfortunately, we will not have unanimous agreement. You don't have unanimous agreement?
Can we just call the vote?
No.
Is there unanimous consent? Or
No. Miss Blaney, you'd like to say something? Yeah.
Can we call the vote then?
Oh,
If it's
yeah,
not
okay,
unanimous,
Ralph.
let's just get her done.
No, but... Yeah.
So just so I'm clear, so Mr. Desilets has indicated he would like to withdraw his previous amendment so he could make the new one of just the 45-day portion, which seemed to have some support. He indicated that he understood there was a need for unanimous consent. Did you ask for unanimous consent then to do that, and did we receive it?
So that's what I'm going to do right now, to
Sorry, I
ask...
misunderstood. I thought you were moving to the vote.
Yeah, but what I understand is we have an amendment from Mr. Desilets to withdraw 2 paragraphs and a line on the first one. And Mr. Desilets would like to withdraw this amendment. So I need unanimous consent for the committee members to do that.
No.
I don't have the unanimous consent on that. So, Mr. Desilets, we have to debate your amendment like as it is and go to... Yes, Mr. Richards?
So on a point of order, just to get some advice from our clerks on this, it seems as though, I think 30 days would be reasonable, and I think it remains reasonable, but there does seem to be some support for the 45-day portion. Mm-hmm. However, the last 2 points are fairly important, and I think they need to remain, and it seems as though there's been some comfort provided to members of the committee that had some concern about it, namely Mr. Desilets. And so now we're put in a position by a government member choosing to not provide unanimous consent for Mr. Desilets to remove his previous amendment, to move the new one to allow us to have the 45-day time frame. We're put in an awkward position now because people want to support 45 days, but they can't. But they would have to support removing the 2 bullets, which I think are important. Can I ask the advice of the clerk on this? Is there a way, in a sub-amendment, could one could one move to keep the last 2 bullet points so that the rest of his amendment can be voted on without having to take out something we don't want to take out?
Yeah, let me explain it to you. So we don't have unanimous consent to withdraw this amendment. So now we're going to vote on the amendment. And if it doesn't pass, now we're going to go back to the motions. But anyone can present a new amendments on the motion itself. So that's okay.
So be clear then, if there's a feeling, if a committee member, if any of us as committee members want to keep the last 2 bullet points, what we should then do is defeat the amendment.
Let me ask the clerk to explain a little bit this part. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, well, I'm a little perplexed. I'm a little perplexed because Mrs. Blaney asked for the vote. She called for the vote. Mr. Richards, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to finish with the clerk, and I'm going to come back to you. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'on fait en fait?
I believe I have a point of order.
Yes, yes.
The first one to speak.
I know.
Yeah, thank you.
I know. Okay, let's go. Laissez-moi expliquer la situation.
Okay, let me explain the situation with our clerks. The amendment that is proposed by Mr. Desilets, which is on the table, if we have to vote on it, because this amendment is rejected, we cannot come back with another amendment that's similar to this one. We cannot come up with another amendment for relating to the 45 days, another amendment that would eliminate the last two paragraphs. So, ideally, we should go back to Mr. Desilets and say, let's split this amendment in two. First, with the 45 days, we could vote on the 45 days, and then the last two paragraphs eliminated or not, we can vote on whether to keep them or remove them. And just so we can proceed, I see that members of the committee are discussing this. Generally, there is consensus on some points, but since we do have to follow the rules, it would be a good idea to go this way to allow Mr. Desilets to split his amendment into two parts, and we can vote on the 45 days, and then on the last two paragraphs he would like removed. So I had a point of order from Mr. Sampson. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that we are following the process. Ms. Blaney called for the vote, so we do have to put the matter to vote. Well, I've not finished. How do you know?
Well, my argument is, so I don't know how you can say it's not true.
Mr. Sanson, please. Yes.
Merci.
So thank you. Madame Blaney asked for the vote. Mr. Richards raised a point of order. It wasn't really a point of order. It was rather a point of argument. So once that is determined, we can put the matter to vote. That's how I understand this. Yes, I understand that, but we are amongst ourselves. And what matters for us, we're working for veterans who would like to reach some common ground. As I said, some are in favor of removing the last two paragraphs, and most seem in agreement with the 45 days. Yes, we could decide to vote on the amendment such as proposed, but understanding that we cannot come back with the 45 days and we cannot remove the last two paragraphs. Mr. Richards.
Mr. Chair, if I understand correctly, your ruling is that we're going to hold a vote on the two elements separately, the 45 days and then on the removal of the last two paragraphs. If that's the case, I'm comfortable with moving to the vote. If not, I would have more to say.
First of all, Mr. Desilets has the floor. He has to propose that and having unanimous consent to go on that. Please, just a second. Merci. So, Monsieur Desilets.
Thank you, Mr. Desilets. What's your intention, Mr. Chair? I don't want the debate to drag on. Well, the 45 days, I wish to have it. I thought about it, the amendment as such. That's what I have in my head. I'm still ready to discuss. Somebody mentioned 40 days earlier. Is it really relevant? Do you really want to reduce the deadline? If that's the case, if I understand that, maybe I could split my amendment into two, if that would please everybody. Otherwise, obviously, I would rather go with the amendment as it is. It is not such a pressing issue for me, this deadline. It's important, but it's not vital. Well, Mr. Desilets, if we understand you well, you were saying you would like to correct in the first paragraph, remove this line that you mentioned and maintain the 45 days as you presented. Well, it's not really a dramatic issue. If we could bring everyone together, please, everybody, I'd like to build consensus. So I'll ask Mr. Richards, does the 45 days, is that a problem for you?
My only concern is having to vote on both parts together, because I think there is some agreement. I was still comfortable with 30, but I'm comfortable with 45 as well. So my suggestion would be that we split the vote. I think that you can make that suggestion so that we can have one vote on the 45-day portion. I'd be comfortable to support that, and one vote on. A separate vote then on the removal of the last two, which I wouldn't support. But that would allow committee members to have a vote on the two elements separately, so that some that want to support one can support it.
Moi, je peux résumer ma perception, là.
Oui.
Moi, j'en ai pas de problème.
Well, I don't have an issue with that. We can vote on the amendment as received. So we'll remove the 3 and the 4. And the deadline, we'll discuss this later, but we can vote on that. An amendment, and then there could be modifications, amendments later. And secondly, we could go with the 30 days. Is that it? Second, separately. So we'll vote on the amendment, and then there's a modification, and there's a vote on the 30 days. No, Mr. Desilets, no, that's not. It's with the consensus of the committee members. There will be a first vote. We'll change the first two paragraphs to 45 days, and the phrase or the sentence you would like to remove. And then there will be a second vote saying we would remove the last two paragraphs. So these are the two votes that I heard. And Mr. Richards and Ms. Blaney, you follow this? Great. So the two Mr. Desilets' amendments, the first two paragraphs, that we remove the 30 days and we replace it by 45 days. and the sentence it says, or that was sent to her related to medical assistance.
Si on l'ajoute? Non, ça veut dire que ça, c'est enlevé. Ça, c'est pas dans le... Non. Donc, c'est ça que je dis. Donc, les deux premiers paragraphes.
So that's what I'm saying. The first two paragraphs will add 45 days instead of 30 days, and we'll remove the sentence starting where it was sent up till the question. So I would like to put this to a vote. Any objections to...
I'm a little bit confused now.
Let me read it. Let me read the
My understanding was we were going to simply have a vote on 45 days, and then we were going to have a separate vote on removing the last two paragraphs. I didn't know there was some new sentence being added.
Mr. has a paragraph on the first item. He said that we should remove ou qui lui ont été envoyés concernant l'aide médicale.
Where it was sent to her related to medical assistance in dying and internal investigations on the matter.
Chair, I believe it was including related to the internal investigation into the matter.
Voilà. OK. Voilà. Donc, après vérification.
So, upon verification, the vote will relate to only to the first two paragraphs, simply changing 30 days to 45 days.
D'accord.
Right. So,
Richards?
I still want to be clear. Like, I was hearing amongst the committee members a desire to increase the deadline, 45 days. I didn't hear anyone really arguing that they wanted to necessarily keep the deletion of the internal investigation. So my understanding is we were going to just vote on just the 45-day portion.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we're going to vote only on the 45 days pour l'amendement. Donc,
for the amendment, any objections in adopting Mr. Desile's amendment, replacing 30 days by 45 days? No objection. So the amendment passes. And if I understand, Mr. Desile is also asking through an amendment that we remove the last two paragraphs of the motion. So I'll put this to a vote. Always positively, do the members of the committee wish to keep the last two paragraphs of this motion? So we'll go to a vote. Do the members of the of the committee agree to keep, not remove, to keep the last two paragraphs of this amendment? It's not clear to me. We have an amendment on the table asking us not to keep the last two paragraphs of the motion. That is to remove the last two paragraphs of this motion. And the way I present the vote, that's to remove. Now, do the members of the committee agree with the removing the last two paragraphs of this motion? So we will vote. I heard some yeses, some noes, so I'll ask the clerk to proceed to a vote on the last two paragraphs of this motion. So we're voting on Mr. Desile's second amendment. So the motion is to remove point 3 and 4, the last two paragraphs of the amendment. So we'll start with the vote.
Oui.
Mr. Miao.
Yes.
Mr. Rogers. Yes. Monsieur Sanson. Oui. Ms. Valdez.
Oui.
Mr. Dowdell. Against. Mr. Richards. Opposed. Mr. Tourny. Opposed. Ms. Wagenthal.
No.
Monsieur Desilets. Ms. Blaney.
Against.
Yeas pour 6, nays contre 5.
Donc, l'amendement.
So Mr. Desile's amendment has been adopted.
Maintenant, nous allons
So we'll resume debate on the motion such as amended or modified, saying we're keeping the first two paragraphs and the last two are removed. So if you would want to speak on this motion, on this amended motion, this is the time.
alors si
So if there are no speakers, I will put the motion to a vote, such as amended. Is there an objection to adopt the motion as amended by Mr. Desile? Without objection, so the amended motion is passed. So we'll take measures based on this amended motion. Would the members of the committee wish to discuss other issues, present other options? Mr. Desile, as announced at the beginning, Mr. Chair, I had a motion to present it
Vous en avez eu.
to the committee. I think you received a copy. Sorry. I'm trying to find it. It's that the chair of the committee write a letter to the Ombudsman of Veterans suggesting examining allegations of medical assistance in dying offered to veterans by Veterans Affairs Canada. That's it. So if you look at the Ombudsman's mandate, he can try to look at certain situations. It doesn't mean that he would accept them, but it would be another way of seeing if there is anything behind these allegations. That's what it seems like. Thank you, Mr. Desile. I hope the members have received a copy in their email if they would like to debate this. Yes, Madam Morgenthau.
In recalling the minister's testimony, I believe he indicated that in addition to themselves, that the ombudsman was also engaged in this process. Is that already happening or not?
I don't know.
Already directed by?
We didn't have any information concerning this. Yeah. No.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Mr. Casey or Mr. Sanson?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for the minister, but my recollection is that he said that he would invite. If she chose, he had no problem with her getting involved in the file. So yeah, that's her job. No objection.
Alors, sur cette motion présentée.
So on the motion presented by Mr. Desile, I think the motion has been presented, debated, so we can put Mr. Desile's motion to a vote, asking that the chair of the committee write a letter to the Veterans Ombudsman suggesting to look at allegations of medical assistance in dying offered to employees by Veterans Affairs Canada. Does it please the committee to adopt this motion? No, without objection, Mr. Desile, the motion has passed. Thank you, Chair. But since the beginning, we're wondering if there have been other complaints, serious complaints, if there have been complaints to the Ombudsman, we don't have that information. And that motion would allow us to bring out something that the Ombudsman might have received, and the complaints would be different, one from the other. So while we're doing committee work, I would like to ask members of the committee Thursday this week.
I had a motion I wanted to.
You have a motion? Okay, please go ahead, Mr. Richards.
And I will apologize, I can't recall if this was already on notice and if members have it or not, but if not, we can make sure it's sent and distributed here. That Veterans Affairs Canada provide the committee with the training materials and training modules that were distributed to Veterans Affairs employees to clarify the department's policy on discussing medical assistance in dying. So it's simply, it had been indicated to us that there was training, provided, or there was going to be training provided to all Veterans Affairs employees to clarify the department's policy. Obviously, it would be helpful, I think, for the committee to know what that training consisted of so that we can determine, I think if we're going to make suggestions or recommendations following our study, it would be helpful for us to know what in fact, what type of materials or training modules were provided to Veterans Affairs employees to determine whether they're adequate to ensure that, I think what we all want to ensure, which is that no veteran ever has this kind of a suggestion made to them again. And so if we're going to do that, we need to be able to assess them. That's the rationale for asking for the materials.
Thank you, Mr. Richards, but I think that motion was on notice, so we can discuss it and adopt it or not. So it's up to the committee. Any intervention on that motion from Mr. Blake Richards? Est-ce que le comité...
So does the committee wish to... Any objections to adopting this motion introduced by Mr. Blake Richards? Without objection, this motion is adopted. What I wanted to say, Thursday this week, the clerk, well, we had to have witnesses today. These witnesses are still waiting, and it was the employability study that was introduced by Mr. Sean Casey, and the issues to know, does the committee want the clerk to reactivate these measures so we can have 2 or 3 witnesses next Thursday afternoon during our committee meeting? What's your position on that?
Monsieur Sanson?
Mr. Sanson? Just to make sure that we don't invite someone and then having to cancel at the last second, because we don't know exactly how the week will play out. I think from the past we can confirm that over the past 6-7 years we've ended after question period Thursday. I can't speak for others, but we cannot have witnesses on standby, knowing there is a strong possibility of suspending the important work we are doing. So that's just an opinion. Thank you, Mr. Sanson. And I must also add that over several sessions, these witnesses have been made to wait. So I think it's wise to debate the situation, Mr. Blake Richards.
And I can appreciate what Mr. Sanson was saying. I certainly can, because I know that there's there is a possibility that will be the case. But I also think that it's incumbent upon us. We've got very important work to do here on behalf of veterans, and there is a lot of issues that we need to deal with as a committee. If the House is still sitting, I think we should be prepared to meet So I think what I would do is I think we should, let's not ignore reality that there's a good chance this meeting might not happen if the House has risen. But I think we should also be prepared to work if the House is still sitting. So perhaps what we could do is sort of blend this together a little bit and indicate to the witnesses that, just be clear with them that we would like to schedule you for this meeting, but we are going to be right up front with you that it may be the case that we have to reschedule you for after Christmas, so that they know, so that they're not surprised when at the last minute that we have to tell them that we can't have a meeting, but that we should be prepared to have one if the House is still sitting. So maybe we do schedule some witnesses, but give the witnesses a clear understanding that it may be canceled because the House may rise.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Richards. But before I go to Ms. Blaney, I would like to ask the clerk. She's in contact with them since 3 weeks for the last month. So can you give us a heads up on that, please?
So the witnesses were scheduled at first early December. We had motions that we need to hold meetings on other topics. So the witnesses are available for this Thursday, but please note this is the third time we're moving them in a sense. But I did call them to see if they were available for Thursday, and some of them said no. One I'm waiting. So that's where we are right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Blaney?
Well, I have to say that I don't want to waste these people's time. I just think it's disrespectful to ask them that many times and then say, well, we might see you, but we may not. So I would say there's a lot for us to do. I certainly won't be sitting on my laurels during those times. There's a lot of other things that I have to get done, but I don't want to disrespect witnesses. So I think that today should probably be our last visit until the new year.
Monsieur Desilets?
Je demanderais,
I would go pretty much along those lines, but I would ask the clerk if there is something else we could have on the menu for Thursday in order not to lose a sitting. The decision is up to the members of the committee. For the next study, that's what we had. And the other decisions are up to the committee. There is no report that could be half analyzed. The issues of reports and motions, we have just passed several motions. The report on marriage after 50 years had to be filed this Wednesday, so we don't have anything left on the agenda necessarily. Mr. Chair, once again, I asked the floor first.
I was just going to suggest, the one study that we seem to have not done anything further, we haven't scheduled other meetings, we haven't had discussion about anything else that's required on it, would be the rehab contract. And I don't know where we were at with that, if there was others that wanted to have further meetings or anything, but if not, could we perhaps set aside committee business that day to give instructions for a report? That would give our analysts some time leading up to the end of January when we return to work on a report. That might be a good use of the committee's time. It wouldn't require any witnesses to be scheduled or rescheduled. I still appreciate and understand there's a good chance this meeting may not happen, but if it does, it doesn't inconvenience anybody, and we would be able to move forward a piece of committee business that's, I think, a pretty important one.
Thanks. Mr. Sanson.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's exactly what I was going to propose. The subcommittee could meet to look at the studies to follow up on in the new year, because there's the last study which had been approved by the committee of the whole and also the subcommittee. I think we can at least have a subcommittee meeting. It's certainly will not be time wasted. We will still be at work. Thank you, Mr. Sanson. we have 25 minutes before us. I don't know if we should go in camera, but we could instruct our analysts over the 25 minutes left. Mr. Richards.
That we provide instructions now. I mean, I would be prepared to do that. I don't know if other members of the committee are, and if Thursday's a better time, but I mean, I'm prepared to provide instructions.
Do we have to go? Well, okay. Yeah. Well, merci. So, qu'est-ce que le comité souhaite faire?
So, well, what is the desire of the committee? We could suspend, and in 5 minutes we'll be in camera to give instructions to our analysts. So, and we'll be pleased to discuss that.
Bon. Pas de réaction.
So, no reaction then. So, on that note, we'll suspend. And we'll